Hey everybody, and welcome back to Benny and Leon. Today's episode, we're getting ready for the 2025 season. I signed up to a race meet that starts in Feb. That's like 2 months before we usually go racing, so time for Leon to come out of hibernation. In that little introduction there, you would have heard me, we're taking Leon back to the track. And generally our race meets start sort of April, but this year I've decided to do something different because we didn't do much racing last year. So I'm kicking it off with a bang. We're taking this boy back to his spiritual home down at Wakefield Park Raceway, which is now called One Raceway. I'm super keen for that because, you know, never raced there, so that'll be awesome. It's down south, so we're going to try ourselves out against those awesome New South Wales and Victorian competitors, and just something different, you know. I'm keen to go down there and have a crack at the new track. So before we get there, we need to do a whole bunch of maintenance on him. We'll go through that in a minute, but I wanted to bring you guys up to speed on a whole bunch of things that have just sort of been bubbling away in the background. The first is the Godzilla motor. Now, what's happening with the Godzilla motor, I hear you say? Well, we've got a few bits and pieces lined up, and we've been speaking to Matty Russell, and we're gonna get that thing built pretty shortly. So I'm thinking we may get it done and put into the car prior to this next race meeting. Maybe, that's an absolute maybe. The motor that's in here is still Son of Godzilla, still a kick-ass engine, still will do great. So I'm either way with it, you know. But possibly, I think in the month after that, we'll probably end up building that other motor, getting it into Leon, putting him on the dyno, tuning him up, and then bringing him back to Queensland. So that would be pretty sweet. But we've had that bubbling away in the background, something we've just been working on. I guess a little bit of more information around how that motor fared and what we saw inside it. So we did see, if you do go back to that video where we went to Matty's place, you will see that we, you know, we did have a bearing that was caught up on the eccentric shaft. It didn't mark the shaft, so that was one good thing. Side seals were smashed. To be honest, that motor had been together for 8 years and spinning to 8,000 RPM every single time we went out in a practice, qualifying, you know, or race situation. So kind of not surprised that that, you know, the side seals have been squished. Yeah, but they were really the only two things. Oh, and the housings had a little bit of a crack where the spark plug comes through, which, again, from the use of it, be perfect in a street motor, you know, like you'd still run them in a street motor, but because it's a race motor, we're going to throw some brand new OEM Mazda housings at it, 12A housings, and yeah, just build a nice new fresh, fully fresh motor. So I'm keen to see that, because we're going to try a few different things again this time around, and I'm hoping that we can break the horsepower that this 252.4 is what this car put down previously. So I'm aiming for a 260, 270. Might sound ridiculous, but there's a lot of things I want to try. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Next thing I've been working on is we are going to give Leon a bit of an upgrade in the diff department. So we're going to pull out this floater and put in a race products floater. So check all the mad race products bits up here. The other car, Betty, already has a race products floater in it, and the reason for swapping it around is I'm just tired of carrying 2 sets of spares, you know, 2 sets of axles, 2 sets of bearings, 2 sets of bearing seals. Like, it's just, I'm just doubling up on gear for no real reason. So I thought it was easier if we go and, you know, we go and put another floater in that's identical. We got some backing plates and things as well. So beautiful work by the team down at Race Products, and yeah, we're going to get that cracking on at the same time. We're also going to do a Watts link. So this car currently runs a Panhard bar, which you can see that big fat thing there runs across. I want to put a Watts in it just to make, again, both the cars identical. I don't think there's any real performance advantage, to be honest, to running a Watts or a Panhard bar. I think they're all quite the same. So, you know, again, just doing it, commonality of spares, sick of having different things. Yeah, that sort of stuff. And the final bit, which is what we're sort of working on today, is brakes. So you would have seen in the last episodes rear brake trouble, and the fact that we completely lost all of the shoes off the back of the car, created a little bit of a fire. Yeah, it wasn't good. So this time around, we've gone and got new ones made. So these are what they call a green gripper, or a GGW, green gripper woven material. Apparently used on HQs. So for us in our little RX2, we should be pretty sweet. We're going to find out, because Wakefield Park will be the first time we run them. We're going to run them with new drums as well. And in today's ep, I'm going to lighten those drums, as you'll see. We drill a few holes in them, try and get a little bit of weight out of them, and also so they can breathe a bit better, just to keep the heat out of them. We're also going to be fitting some new front rotors and our favourite pad from Project Mu, the club racer. So we've got a fair bit of work to do. We're also going to have to fit that wraparound exhaust that I made recently, because Wakefield Park still does have noise regulations that we need to adhere to. So the wraparound pipe's going to get its first run, which is going to be awesome. And if I get time, and you know how I got you guys that have watched for a while, you'll know that I taught myself to TIG weld last year. Well, I'm going to teach myself how to TIG weld aluminium, and I'm going to stitch together a couple of tanks that I designed a long time ago, had laser cut. They just sat there because I didn't know how to TIG. Now I know how to TIG. The next progression for me is to, you know, TIG aluminium. So we're going to give that a red hot crack. I have been doing a lot of little bits and pieces jobs with mild steel stainless. And I've got that down really awesome now, where I just pick it up. I never dip the, you know, the tungsten anymore. Like all those sort of newbie things, I'm not doing anymore. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to put that together. We'll see. It could be famous last words. I could try it, and it could be heaps harder than everything else. But you know, the only way to learn is to give it a crack. Before we get into everything, though, I want to fire it up, because he has been asleep for the last 2 months. It's been 3 months. To be honest, I just haven't had time to look at him. I've been, you know, working pretty hard. It was a bit of a thrash the end of last year where I work, and yeah, I just haven't had time to really, you know, do anything with him. Couple that to the Christmas break, and you know, taking some time off just to chill with the family, and also do a few renovations on the house so that I can get that finished. Yeah, hopefully this year, once that's all done, it's very close to being finished on the house, I can focus a bit more on these cars and start building a few more of them. Because, yeah, I want to get a few more of them rolling together, because there's a few too many cars not rolling around at the moment. I'm sure that's the problem for everybody. All right, let's go crank him up. Let's see how well he fires after being sitting for so long. First things first, get us some ventilation and get me some earplugs. As much as I love hearing that rotary beat, I still like my hearing too. Okie dokie. So I've checked the oil and done all the standard sort of stuff as you do before you fire something up. I'm going to give it a crank without, just to get some oil pressure up. So I don't really want it to fire up. Can't even remember what the switches are, boys. That's a bit sad. Is that? No. Can't even remember. No, we don't want that. We want that off. And dry cranking. That's filling full of fuel. Let's just give 2 hits down here. So, right. Let's see if he fires. How's that? I'm going to start with the rear brakes today. So what I need to do is drill out the holes so it can breathe a bit better. A little bit lightweight, but I mean, not a lot. And it's very close to where the spinning axis is. So if they're out by a little bit, it doesn't really make much of a difference. It won't cause a vibe for us. Generally speaking, I usually do them in a mil, but didn't have that luxury because, yeah, dummy me went and entered for a race meet, and the guy who usually does my stuff couldn't fit them in. So be how it do, I will hand mark them and hand drill them this time in my pedestal drill. I've done that before 1,000 times, but yeah, it is nice if you can put in a mill and do it nice, perfectly and repeatable. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't make much of a difference if you're a couple of mil out here or there. Yeah, so these are the new guys, brand new freshies, very hard to find these days. Going forward, we might have to look at casting some because it just doesn't seem to be much out there. So if you do know of any stashes somewhere, leave it in my comments, because I would definitely buy a few just to have as spares and just for the road cars that I want to build. Okay, we now have these looking fresh. One thing I did yesterday afternoon was cleaned up this side, because this is the side that we had, you know, obviously the fire. And I thought what I would do is show you guys the old cylinder that got burnt to an absolute crisp, show you the damage, and also explain maybe how this stuff sort of works, because they're quite basic. So, you know, got a wheel cylinder. That's the, you know, that's the body of it, the manifold, if you will. Inside there, you can see the 2 ports in there. Obviously, one's for the brake fluid coming in here, one's for when you're bleeding it. You'll see on ours, looks like it's got a sleeve in it. That's because it does. We stainless steel sleeve them. The issue back in the day was that this cast alloy would get pitted, and then when you're when this guy's sliding in and out of it, obviously the pits leak fluid through, and they'd have to throw the whole body away. So because this stuff's getting a bit rare, I would say get your stuff sleeved if you're going to rebuild it. You then have the little piece of rubber. So this is the seal that sits in the end here. So it's the bit that slides up and down, that has, on the back side is where all the pressure comes from. So the, you know, the fluid's coming in, it's going into there, it's pushing. You also have a little spring goes in there as well. So we would have a, you know, another piece of rubber in here. So basically that's how it sits in there. The spring helps keep these pushed out a little bit, so that they don't push all the way back in and then can't come back out. A bit like I guess a return spring, if you will. And then you have the the actual metal pistons. Now, this one is off the burnt, the one that was on fire. So it might look a bit crusty, but I think we can save it through a bit of a wire wheel and maybe a Scotch Brite or something. What you're looking for on here is you don't want any scoring, you know, anything that's going to score that inner bore. You don't want, because obviously you don't want to gouge it, because then it'll make it leak past the rubber. But yeah, that's a wheel cylinder, and they're very, very basic. They work very well. A lot of people ask, why do we still run drum brakes? And that's simply because the rules state it, you know. Yeah, we do what the rules say, so that's how we roll. It'd be nice to put a set of discs on the back. I would say put a set of discs on the back if you're building a street car, or some other category, like improved production, something like that. You can run disc brakes. I would definitely do that. But for us, we make them work and we make them live. Yeah, so that is a cylinder. So right now, I'm gonna quickly thrash it on. Gonna thrash these back on. So put a new set of those on, and the new drum. So it'll be all fresh on this corner, and then I'll bounce over the other side and get that sorted. And finished. Looking sweet. Brand new drums, brand new shoes. Everything is looking mint. So now we're gonna change our attention to front brakes. And for those who haven't been around on the channel for a while, what we do is we run a Volvo 4-pot, because that's all we're allowed to run in the category. Project Mu pads. I've gone through Sercos, Winmax, Ferodos, I don't know, lots and lots of different pad compens, and I just find that the Club Racer is the nicest. I like the way it bites, the initial bite, and I like when you've got on that threshold of nearly locking a tyre. I feel like you've got a lot of good feedback through here. Obviously feedback is also relative to your master cylinders and your brake balance setup and all sorts of jazz, but they work for me, so they work pretty sweet. Rotors are a BMW rotor that we have machined down, and yeah, PCD spun into it and all the rest of it. So certainly not an off-the-shelf item, but it's just something we have to do to keep brakes in the thing. I will swap out a pair of these discs and pads pretty well every year. If we're doing 4 race meets a year, we'll basically find that we're only using 1 set of rotors and pads. So these set that are on here are probably done 4 meetings last year. So let's have a look at them. I'll pull them off and I'll show you that as well. And the passenger side is off like that. Pads, as you can see, still a fair bit of meat left on those guys. You know, that's pretty well how they look after every season. Yeah, not a lot to say. I usually knock the top, that little lip off, knock the lip off with a file, and then just store them away in case I need a spare set. I usually keep a brand new set in the race kit, but I'll also keep these as a backup, because you never know when you might need to use something. So when we're stripping down one of these, we like to have a look at everything, because you want to see how things have been wearing and how it's all been going. So for bearings and stuff like that, we only lube them once a year. Might sound insane, but we just don't do enough racing to warrant spending any more time on them other than that. But what I'll do now is I'll throw them in a bucket of petrol or some sort of solvent, you know, like metho or something like that, and give them a nylon brush just to clean them up, and then inspect each one of these rollers, see if they've got if there's anything breaking up on them. If not, they get turfed into the bin. Otherwise they're good. So we also check the inner races here, so this also gets cleaned up. On the inside here is something I'm going to show you, which a lot of people probably should run in their brakes, but a lot of people don't. So what's this thing, you ask? Well, It's a fully adjustable stub axle stiffener. Now a lot of guys just have, you know, a piece of whatever, chromoly tube or some sort of mild steel tube or something in between the two bearings. And basically what it does is it sits up against, you know, if we orientate it the way that, whoa, we lost him. If we orientate it the way that sort of sits in there, so it kind of goes that, and then the rear bearing. Yeah, this guy sits in the middle of them. What it does is it stops the bearings flexing in between each other. And it's just meant to help steady up the disc so the disc doesn't float around causing brake pad knockoff. And brake pad knockoff is when the rotor, this rotor, floats like this. Those pistons in your caliper get pushed back every time it does it. So then when you slam on the brakes, those pistons have to retract. Yeah, well, have to extend, should I say, not retract. They need to extend out before they hit this guy. So that's what you'll see me in the videos when you see the foot cam, is I do a little bit of a left brake tap just to bring those pistons up to the caliper, or up to the back of the brake pad, before I go into the next corner, because I want a consistent brake every time I stand on it. These don't knock off that bad. They're quite good, especially with the stiffener in here, but I still do it just as a reflex thing. I don't know what it is, but just gives me confidence that I'm either going to find that the brakes aren't good prior to jumping on them for the corner, in which case I've got a few, you know, seconds or split seconds to do something about not hitting a wall and trying to slow the car down, or I know it's good and I can enter the corner unabated. So these are a lot of the things that as a race driver you're thinking about when you're driving the car. It's not just about driving the car, it's about keeping the car together. It's about avoiding accidents and destroying your car if you do have a failure. You know, it's obviously about racing people, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in a cockpit with one of these cars when you're hustling it at 100%. A lot of people don't understand that, and when you watch drivers, you know, like Formula One drivers, where they're also twiddling knobs, talking on the radio, and still putting in consistent lap times, it's actually quite amazing that people can do that, because it's quite a challenge. So anyway, getting back to our little stiffener, you can see it's got threads in there, hopefully. Let's have a look. Yeah, you can see some threads in there. So this one's actually adjustable. So it's got a little grub screw on it, locking ring, and you can screw this guy in and out. So what that does is every bearing set is different. I don't care who you are, they do vary, and I'm talking about tiny minute variance, but you know, there is variance in them. So what this guy allows me to do is to basically just adjust it to take up, you know, any of the float that you might be seeing between the two bearings, which, yeah, like I said, it just means that things live a bit longer, you get a bit better of a brake pedal, all that sort of jazz. And also because it's adjustable, it means I don't have to machine one every time I put a new set of bearings in. I can just adjust it with a set of vernier calipers, and then put it back on the car. So if I didn't have this, then I'd have to machine one every single time. So that's a cool, neat little thing that I do use. Okay, getting to the back of this guy. So in the back side there is a bearing as well, which you can see in there. There has this spacer. There's a spacer that pulls out. So this spacer pulls out. It sits on the actual on the sub axle. You then have this bearing seal, and then there's a bearing on the inside there. But check out all this. This is the inside. See all this rubber build up? Pretty amazing where the rubber manages to get itself. Yeah, that's all burnt and crispy rubber. So what I've got to do now is undo these bolts, pull the bolts out of it, pull the disc off it. We'll inspect that disc when I've got everything else off, and then we'll clean up the bearings and put it all back together. That's the last bolt. What's under there? Oh, little dudes are hiding. All right, so the hub will now come out. We run a spacer on the backside, On Betty, I actually have this spacer on the opposite side to take up the gap. So 2 ways of skinning the same cat. Yeah, that's just how it goes. So let's check out this rotor. Get you guys nice and close. So you can see it's been punished a fair bit, but you know, and it's starting to get those crazy cracks in the middle. But yeah, I reckon it can still go another season, to be honest, but I just like to err on the side of caution, and we swap them out. Because who doesn't like fresh brakes every year? It's one of the quiet comforts of driving a race car with new brakes. It's always nice. The pedal feels fantastic at the start of a season. If I had a sponsor, I'd probably swap them more. The only sponsorship I've got is robbing my pockets. All right, so here are the new guys. It's got Master written on it because I had that at the CNC machine shop, and they're making me some new rotors. So I had to actually run down there and grab it back off them because we got to go to Wakefield Park and I needed that one. So what I'm going to do is drop off this one here, and he can yeah, make it work from that.